Yay! I seem to start every one of these with a yay, but I am really excited. So it's number 3 in Awaken the Witches series. And I also want to add in that even though it's named Awaken the Witch, there's only one self-proclaimed witch here today, which is me. And I didn't even know it. And the people in this room, in this space, probably knew it before I did. So yay, I wanted to add that in. But I'm particularly excited because we are the 3 owls and we've been on the Awaken journey so long, and there's so much to say about that. But we are going to start a very 5D theatre-esque slash law ballad way that we started in our beautiful space when we were in rehearsals together, which was a check-in and a meditation. And today, because it's the summer solstice, whatever day this arrives, there's so much beautiful land energy. So I'm going to work with that. And everyone else can enjoy this that joins us and listens in. So close your eyes, owls. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, I think I'm going to turn my video off to stop looking at me. And yeah, really ground into the body. I don't know how in your body you've been today, but I just took some moments to really be in my body. Oh. And there might be a big energy charge somewhere in your body that you can connect into. You didn't actually know was there before. And connect into that space. It might be in your belly. It might be down your legs and your toes. It might be your shoulders. It might be your mind is buzzing. But wherever it is, take that energy and use that beautiful energy that you have inside your body and allow it not to be blocked, to flow right up and down the spine, through the head, through the feet. And today, especially today, just sense the beautiful summer solstice. We have sun here as well. And just connecting with that beautiful stone circle down in Glastonbury, Stonehenge. And we're not often allowed inside that circle. So I want you to take your mind's eye right inside the circle, right inside the stones, and stand in that beautiful power spot and feel that charge all throughout your body. And if you want, in your mind's eye, you can connect with the stones and just feel them under your skin, or feel grass under your feet. Or if you go a little bit deeper, you might feel the beautiful ley lines charging you up. And you can also utilize the sun, which is shining down on us all here on this hot, sunny summer solstice in London. And taking in some big, deep breaths, connecting whichever power spot spoke to you the most, the stones, the sun, the earth, or maybe all three, and breathing that all in, that delicious light. Feeling really grounded. And if there's anything else to be released, any responsibilities, letting them all go. Just coming back into the space. And letting your shoulders relax. and igniting some divine light and a beautiful bubble of protection. And just soaking that all in. And yes, you can place your hand on your heart. Glastonbury is known as the heart chakra of the world. And it's a beautiful place to start this conversation. Into the heart energy, the passion, and the love for what we do in the world. And only when you're ready, you can open your eyes.
Sully moment, my dog had a moment where he came over, so he was whining because he's just had an operation, so I had to go and place him in the right side. He wants to sleep on the wrong side, to move him back to the place where his wound isn't.
Oh, bless him.
You sort of,
what are you doing? Sending him some healing love energy as well. So where do we start? I think I'm going to go backwards in time, back to the beginning. And so for everyone that doesn't know, I have the pleasure of working with both Law and Ellie for quite a while now, as both actresses, both writers, both very creative theatre makers, teachers, mentors, dramaturgs. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. And also, I guess we all started at the same place with a love of Meisner, and inside the hub of the Actors Temple, which is a place where I trained or taught and Ellie owned. And yeah, I think what is so beautiful is that 2017, so it's quite a long time ago, when I started with an idea for Awaken, and I didn't even, it felt so synchronistic because I was writing in a ritual art workshop, and it meant you just journaled and you lit a candle and you celebrated every week that you turned up. And there was this crazy little story about this witch and her soulmate, and it was shocking. I mean, I just journaled it out and I was like, whatever. And then I went down to the Actors Temple and they were like, oh, well, if you want to write your own story, we've got this thing that's closing tomorrow called the Create Project. And I was like, oh, no, oh, my story is useless. And she was like, do you have a synopsis? And I was like, yeah, I have a synopsis, but it has to be in tomorrow. And I'm like, well, write your synopsis tonight and hand that in. And I did. And then, yeah, and got into the Create Project, which I was so excited about those moments in life when you're like, I really want this to align. That's happened to me a few times of the journey of Awaken with Script Accelerator, Park Theatre. I really wanted that to align. And the same with Beacon Arts. It was like, these places just feel right. And that's kind of how the journey started with Awaken. And then working with Law for quite a big deal, and then Ellie stepping in. So yeah, I feel like that's a good place to start. Actors Temple, Meisner, and that love, and everybody that stepped in. Do you both want to speak into that a little bit before I
think for me, it's kind of like before Meisner was ever kind of apparent or visible or a presence in the Actors Temple, the biggest attraction, passion that I had was to offer up an alternative to what was out there at the time. And it just so happened that we were underground most of the time in a basement studio over the years. But for me, the temple always stood for other. It stood for risk-taking. It stood for literally being underground, slightly anarchic, and but also giving people what they need to be independent artists and really kind of carve and forge their own path creatively, whatever that might be. And so, yeah, I think it's just so right how you were talking about organically, how kind of things align and happen like that. And I think to trust the process, and trust kind of what the drive is in you, whether that's out of a negative drive. You know, I mean, I was quite angry at some point at the industry of feeling isolated as an artist, but that can really do something, can't it? It can really power you forward. And the other thing that aligned, and then I'll let Law speak, is that I saw Law in a class. I think you were sitting on stage in a man's suit, or at least that's kind of what I kind of like have this vision of you, just being really powerful and masculine. And not that the two kind of have to go together, but you know where I'm going with this. And it's and I had a very, very strong feeling that I'm going to work with that person, and I don't know how. And at that point you weren't a tutor, and you know, it was years and years ago. But it was very, very strong. And I think that this is what my mind, my intuition was telling me. So that's, yeah.
I just have to say on that I had the same feeling with the Actors Temple. I was there and I was like, I'm going to work with this place. And they didn't do work then. So I don't know how to happen. I was like, I'm meant to be here. All my casting director brain was like, no, you need to go to classic drama school. And I came down and I was like, but this is like what I am somehow. This is raw. This is real. This is you. Yeah. And I was like, and I'm going to work here somehow. We're going to make theatre. Like all these. I was like, but they just teach acting. What are you on about? I just had this knowing. So it was the strangest thing when it actually panned out that way.
But I think the thing about the Meisner technique and the extension of that way of working is that it is raw, and it's not your classical acting. It's not. It relies on actors' faith. It relies on a great deal of preparation so that you can get out of your mind when you want to work, and that is no easy feat, you know. And that's part of the training, is to get out of your head and follow your instinct. And I think the industry doesn't work that way. It's very much the director tells you where to move, how to say, what to say, and when to say it, to a certain or to a great deal, in terms of, I think, the way that it goes. And whereas this training puts the impulse, puts the faith in the actor, so the actor can create whatever magic happens in the moment. And I think that's certainly what I learned and developed after leaving the temple, you know, setting up a theatre company, and we improvised and we worked in that way. So it became very clear that there is a way of being able to write stuff and to work without wallowing in words. You know, actors can go on and on and on and improvise and come up with many, many words, but actually to find a way to create moments that weren't always dictated by words, but were dictated by behaviour. And I think, you know, when one of the dreams that I had, and I know Ellie had, was to create our own work rather than relying on plays that had been written, and writing things that felt like they need to be said, and things that we felt passionate about, you know. And when I sort of came up with the idea of the Create project, it was very much like, how the hell am I going to do this? And there was like 11 actors who'd written things or had ideas for things, and actually in the end we ended up with 3, you know, which was just how it turned out, and, you know, Awaken being one of them. But it certainly felt right, because it was led by the passion to create the work that was real, that wasn't pretend, but also that spoke to, certainly to me. And I think I sort of shared the projects. There's this one, I think, with Mark at the time. Did I share it with you, Ellie? I can't remember, but certainly we sort of talked through, because Mark was involved as well in the early days, of what one we liked, what one felt right, and I think that's what it comes down to, and that's what it comes down to at the Actors Temple, is that instinct and that passion, but that leading from the heart rather than the head, something actually driving us on that isn't ambition, or ambition as in ego ambition.
Yeah. And I think that's the beautiful thing about starting with the meditation, because I do feel like a different person from the person that joined before the meditation. And the fact that you're not needing to fill the space, fill the silence with words, and actually trust that, and trust that the right thing is going to come out between us. But it's a way of working that just brings so many gifts, doesn't it, with it? Because you're taking the mask off rather than putting a mask on. How can you possibly work from somebody who's kind of completely closed in and protecting themselves and full of, nervous energy and, and pasting something on top of that? Whereas if you're actually able to, through connecting with others, able to be authentically you, be yourself on purpose, then the magic can start to arrive.
And now it's so obvious to hear you both speak and really listen to what you're saying. So of course I would have my own awakening in this process. Because it was like, okay, so what do you really want to create? What story do you really want to tell? And there wasn't I remember bringing in, I was training as a healer at the time. So I was training in shamanism, I was training in Reiki, but I was over there training in it. But I couldn't keep that part of myself that was becoming alive and rich and vibrant away. So I ended up just going, should I bring it into the room? And I started to bring my drums, and I started to drum with the actors, and I started to take them through journeys. And I don't know what I expected wasn't going to happen, that we weren't all going to have this amazingly intense. I mean, they were wonderfully open, and I want to just mention the people that joined this process for so many years. So many of the different Actors Temple people jumped in and gave themselves so heartedly. Some of them stayed on the project and gave so much of their soul and their work into the project that it, Awaken it's still them, it's still breathing with their life. And I think that's a testament to the place that people, would do that, and also would go, oh, okay, you're going to bring spiritual stuff, let's try that and explore that. And it really did get very magical, and for me intense, when all of that, because it was like, oh my God, I am going through an awakening while writing Awaken. And I remember saying to Law, like, this is a bit much. And you had already called me a witch a few times, and I was like, I'm not. You're like, okay, all right. She doesn't.
I'm like, yeah, all right.
And I think I want to speak into that, the fact of what you're holding space for the piece has been and is phenomenal. It's quite a gift in itself. You held space not only to grow and nurture when I lost all confidence in the piece and myself, and I remember you said, no, I still believe in you, and brought me back in. And also when to come out and leave people because they're growing something. But beyond that, there's what I call spiritual space holding that you do. It doesn't necessarily need that term, but it is to me, about letting something extra, the soul of the story, the soul of the actors, the soul of the piece come through. That was wonderful, and it's happened all the way through, and certainly at Beacon Arts Centre when we really got that pulse to breathe. I
mean, I think the thing about this this particular piece, and because of all of us, you know, we've been, I don't know, we've been called to this piece. You know, there's been undeniable signs along the way that you know, we've just noticed, or individually as well as together, and this element of grace or magic or spirit, or whatever you want to call that thing, that isn't to do with us as individuals. It's to do with our connection to humanity, to the world, to the greater sense of ourselves, and that you know, I mean, you know, people have talked about it throughout the centuries, that just something comes in, you know, and if you're listening, if you're open, it comes in, and magic happens. And that's, I see that as very much what has happened all the way along, and without a doubt, you know, without doubt, having confidence that you were going somewhere with it, you know, Cheryl. You wanted to write it, and I had no doubt that you were going to do that, and that you were listening, because something needed to be spoken.
I realise that now.
Yeah, and so it really is very appropriate that you've chosen 5D Theatre as your company name, because it is that, isn't it? That's what we're talking about. It's the fifth dimension. It's the transpersonal. It's the things that you can't really explain, but through observation, through paying attention to the world around you, things happen, and that's beautiful. And it might be, yeah, it might kind of spark a whole lot of emotions. It might not always be a good experience that comes your way, and it might be, but no doubt it's all worth it's all worthy experience. Yeah.
And I think that brings me back to I remember Mark saying, "Oh, you should meet Ellie. You remind me of her a little." He was like, "I think you'll get on." And I remember meeting you thinking, have I only just met you? Like, this is easy. And it's been, you know, a joyous collaboration for all three of us. It was like a welcome energy that always needed to come in with Elliot. I feel like it was like, oh, there's the missing puzzle piece, and then it was like, okay, here we go. And I think it was more when we worked, because it was me and you mainly at the Park Theatre for quite a bit of the development. And I remember we were chatting a lot, and the play went into a new direction, and it was at the time when it wasn't really working, half of the play, and I was having a crisis going, I'm not doing this anymore, that is too hard, it's meant to be 3 months and it's 3 years later, and now the play's not working. Damn. And then you came in with a new idea for the structure about bringing the play into court, and it was like those moments of like when you know who to trust. And I remember you get so much feedback as a writer, you get so much thrown at you, and so much, as you do as an actor, a criticism. You get so much, you know, people don't sometimes know how to speak to you softly when you are laying yourself bare, and sometimes they are tearing what you do to shreds. And sometimes it's to be helpful. I mean, most of the time it's to be helpful. It's not to diminish you, but often people don't sometimes know how to give criticism. So you get that over and over again. And there's so many times with Awaken that I was like, I am rubbish writer. I am rubbish. Like, this is useless. And I think if I could give myself a little bit of advice now, 5 years on, and I really want to say this so loudly to people, especially perhaps if they're from a working class background, so they don't have the opportunities, because it's really, you know, harder in the industry as if you come from a background like that, because you don't have the gentle space to not make money. That's the biggest pressure we have on our shoulders. It's like, this has to work in a way, or I don't have the time, all of those things, and you don't have the training, and sometimes you don't have the money for the training. All of those things come into it. But I would say your love for it and your passion for it is enough, and that you will learn all the tools that you need. And if you're meant to be a writer, if you're meant to be an actor, you just are, and none of that class or money or anything can stand in the way of that. And I feel that that's kind of what happened to me. And now I'm at a stage where I'm like, I love my own writing now. I love it. I'm so proud of how I write, because I think I've finally got out of the way and let it come through me. And that doesn't mean to say it's not so much hard work. Writing an epic piece of theatre is really hard work, and I think
I was going to say you put the work in. It's not like it just happens, and there's, you know, it's like we don't need to go to college actually, because life is college and writing is college, and you have written your socks off, you know, when all around you was falling, crumbling, you were still writing, you know, and learning from it, and still putting it out there and asking for feedback and taking the feedback and changing it, and, you know, in a way where it wasn't led by your head, kind of going, oh gosh, okay, right, you know, and you went away and you thought about it and you'd come back. I mean, you've done it the whole way along, and
you've been so gracious as well. I mean,
yeah,
it actually surprised me when you just said I had thoughts of me being a rubbish writer, because I've never heard you through all this time say that. So although it might have been your voice in your head saying it and you telling yourself that, I think maybe you knew better than to verbalize it to us.
I think there were times we would meet up for coffees, and I think there was a couple of moments in there where, you know, up the Portobello Road where you'd be like, oh, although you never said those words, it was like
or sometimes when you felt like you're fighting a battle, and actually that's really clear, but actually the battle isn't with one another, it's actually with something bigger than yourself. And I think if ever there was a play that has so much such a vital core need for it to be voiced, it's Awaken. It's and I think that's what was driving you, what has been driving you all this time. And now for you to be experiencing the kind of the collaboration and the linking up and the, you know, the alignment of all these, you know, campaigns and authors and historians and everybody that shares kind of the work, the need for those voices that were once silenced to be heard again. It's so powerful. And going back to when you were saying, you know, that Law said you have something to say, I always knew you had something to say, Cheryl. And I can remember us sitting down and you saying, but I know what I want to say. And I said, okay, so say it. And actually how difficult that is, you know, and it normally encompasses and normally arrives and manifests in a monologue at some point. But it was escaping, wasn't it? It was hovering with us for a long time until quite recently.
Oh, I said that to a friend today who just went, oh my God, the ending.
Yeah.
I messaged her back and said, that didn't come out till the very last moment, and you two pushed me. And I was like, how many times did I say, Awaken it's done? And you'd be like, great. And I did say to you, you heard it so many times, it's done.
Yeah, okay. And I'd be texting, me and Ellie would quite often go, yeah, she thinks it's done.
Because I could see a look in your eyes, like,
is that it? No, that's not it. Is that it? No, that's not it either.
We both gave it. It was like, courage. This bit's really working. Oh,
and then, you know, and then at the right time as well. So Leslie Hart comes in, you know, and
amazing Leslie, yes.
You know, new energy and being able to see the kind of script from a slightly removed kind of place, whereas we're so kind of with it, you know, living and breathing this script. Really, it's in us. So that was invaluable, I think, to kind of just get over the, you know,
amazing. And she had a wonderful way of working that was like so passionate about the spirituality of the piece and the soul piece, even though that's not how she connects with the world. She was like, it was like, teach me about this, and if you can teach me about it, you can put it in and talk to an audience about it. So it wasn't teaching, but it was like we would talk about it, and if I could explain it to her so she got it, then she'd be like, okay, now get that in there, because that's and it was like I would be like, oh god, that's not clear, oh that's why I'm really doing that. And you know, there was so many times I walked away and I was like, ah, damn it, yeah, she's right, I haven't got, okay. And then, you know, she finally just said to me, now after all the technique and the work, just go write the ending in a mess. Pour out of you, don't think about structure, about anything, just think about like, I've done all this work, I've changed all these words, and now what needs to be said. And I thought that was
it came through you, didn't it? I mean, eventually that's how it manifested it, kind of. I
still think of that moment where I gave it to you when it ended with the priest, the man, and you were like, you both just looked at me and was like, and Laura just put it so diplomatically, I'm just going to ask you. I was like, it's done, isn't it? And you're like, do you want to end your play with the man's last word?
Speaking,
Focus, that be the focus. I just put it to you. Is that what you want to do? Like, no.
And it's just so, I mean, it's so wonderful, because I was listening to a talk with Mary W. Craig the other day, and she was talking about how women's voices in the 16th century, 17th century were not heard. They literally were not heard, and that the voice that was heard was the minister, was the kirk. You know, we're talking Scotland here, but and so, yes, absolutely not. You know, so we're not going to give away the ending, but the priest or the man does not have the final say. Yes. I think that's important.
And I think that's a wonderful segue into the Beacon Arts movement of it, because that's happened so recently that we've been up to Scotland together, and it was such a magical week for me. It was absolutely magical, because so many things could have not happened. There was, you know, COVID flying around. My dad had been so ill on the run up for the, you know, past year, and I thought I couldn't even hold it together. And you both held space for me to kind of, so much space and kindness. And I remember Jam saying to me, I'm so glad you've got Awaken while all this is going on with your family, and I'm so glad you're with Ellie and Law, because you'll be okay, and you need this in your life to keep going. And she's so right, it kept me going. And it also, you know, I knew that when it was hard, you know, like running from the chemo department into the reading online, going, oh my god, I haven't practiced anything. It's like, fine, you know the script, it's fine.
And it was a short amount of time, and it's an epic play, so it was extraordinary how what can be achieved in because it was 6 days, wasn't it? As well as the filming, it was 6 days. And
I think let's talk into that process in that moment, because I was a bit overly ambitious. Let's try this. I wanted a real tree brought in. I was a bit nuts for a while, but remember that? Should come with a tree? No.
Well, it was wonderful, because we knew we had to have scripts in hand, so we couldn't. There's no way that we could rehearse and not have the scripts for that amount of time. And I think that it's that wonderful thing of like, well, use what we have. You know, I really do believe that with theatre, and I love creating from seemingly nothing. You know, create from one another and the resources that we have. And Beacon was wonderful, wasn't it, for so many reasons, not least the backdrop of the Clyde, and it's, you know, looking just so beautiful. But I think that just paring it down to literally a couple of like acting boxes and you know, and a black cloth and a red cloth and a few chairs. But actually how much more powerful that can be sometimes for the audience's imagination, rather than bringing on a whole tree. Yeah. So
and actors in their costumes and, you know, attitude, like, it was what was left to the imagination, you know. And I think that's what you work with when you haven't got a big set and you haven't got all that. You've got, okay, well, what can I leave to the imagination? You know, the scenes that were more difficult. What can we do that gives a hint at it without actually showing it? We know what's happening and we get it. You know, if there's any violence that happens, we get it because of the sound or because of a movement, rather than that we have to see it like on a film where it gets very graphic. Actually, and also with the script in hand. I mean, all the actors were absolutely amazing, because every movement had to be, unless the lines were learned, which thank goodness you did learn your lines, Cheryl. But actually, to move around with a script in hand and a folder is just, that's no easy thing to do at all. And it was incredible that actually, credit to you all, that you all managed to actually follow the flow of the play without dropping a script, and also without losing place too much, or without losing the flow or going over the top. Or, I mean, it was just incredible how it happened and how it actually worked. I mean, okay, we did prepare. We prepared what we were going to work on and how we were going to work on it. But ultimately, at the end of the day, we still had to go with, well, what have we got in the room? How can we make this work?
And we always knew that you were we really did want to step it up, didn't we? We didn't want a rehearsed reading with people sat down on chairs. And so, you know, with the sound, with John Beals as sound designer and Laura Hawkins as lighting designer. And we knew that sound and light is a really massive part. It's such a big part of Awaken. And I think that those two elements really just added so much to the reading, didn't they?
And we didn't even have them there. It was just like a few days, and then we had a few days with acts, which was also a brand new cast that had never worked together. And I just, because it's such a big piece, but I find Awaken's quite a relational piece. Like the relationships are deep and intense in it, and it was lovely to me how everyone came together. And I can't say this is the easiest piece for me to do. You know, a lot of it has come from my soul story. I speak quite openly about this, that it's stuff that I've channeled, stuff that I believe in, stuff that's happened to me on different dimensions and ways. And even, you know, going through caring for my dad, and there's someone sick, you know, it was working on all sorts of different ways, and it's been with me a long time, so it was quite deep and intense. But the beautiful team that sort of held it together, and it was everyone that was kind of held space for that in the room, and the connection, and what I kind of looked around, I was like, everybody's giving it everything they have. And it shows when I was like, God, everyone's given this up level of, they're in it, they're giving everything, and they're wonderfully talented. It was a group of amazing people to come together, every single one, down to you know, Daryl who's filming it, you know, all of us. It was the whole team, all the actors. And I remember I had a few moments where I was just sitting there in it going, this is great, this is I kind of forgot, so I don't mean from an egotistical way, but I forgot that I wrote it, and I was like, this is good. And I was just watching people do something. You're in it, like snap out. Just having moments where I was like, you know, I think it's happening in the court where moments where my character doesn't speak as much, and I remember thinking, this is really good. Who wrote that? Because it still surprises me that I could manage from reading it. But just watching, people play, and even, you know, way before we got into the room, and Ellie, bless us, they're sorting out light and haze and different things going way above, and it was true, the sound and lighting was so important, and I didn't factor in how much work that would be to make that happen that way for a reading, but it did make it next dimensional, and there's a spiritual element there.
And it's just pairing it down to its most essential kind of, you know, almost distilling it down to the things that are really going to kind of make an impact. So we won't give it away, kind of like how the lighting is, is why it's so significant in it. But things like a haze machine, if you haven't got a huge number of lights, then it is a way to kind of fill the space with atmosphere, and things like that. And I think that looking forward, if I may, kind of like into the next incarnation, which we've kind of seen it, we've seen it as, haven't we? We've kind of like, rather than like going, and now we're going into production, it's like, okay, but it does feel like actually each time it's a reincarnation of Awaken. It's kind of, okay, so what's the next incarnation going to be? And I think it's always still about having that faith, because it's not that it's going to align, that the right venues will want to take Awaken. We have a dream, don't we, about the kind of a ley line tour, and I could start to name kind of places that we'd like to go on that ley line. But it's a wonderful thing to look at, to look at the UK, to look at the areas that suffered the worst witch persecutions, and honor those women and men, but mainly 85% certainly in Scotland were women, and honor those places, and bring their names back, which the play does. So I think that it's trusting that, and I think the film is a wonderful gift that we gave ourselves to film that reading, so that it's now out there in the world and can be seen by a lot more people, before it becomes an in-person journey to a theatre near you.
And it's worth mentioning the London element of it, which is just because it was set here, and with all the research that you did with canting, and extraordinary amount of research and finding that you did in order to bring the first act to life and to make sense of it. It was just incredible, that journey, and to recognise that actually the witch hunts weren't just in a couple of places, and it wasn't a couple of places here and in America. It's greater than that, and it's still happening. It's not like it stopped. It hasn't stopped. The persecution of women under the title of witch, is still going on in the world now, and I think it's worth recognizing that's why this piece is so important, because it's still happening. And yes, we can start to recognize in this country, and in the UK, because we have to give those women credence for the lives that were taken from them, from the spirit that was taken from them, whether they came back in another incarnation or not. Actually, that's part of our history that has to change, and this piece is a part of that journey.
Yeah, that's so beautiful. And I actually saw, as you were speaking, a light flicker across my room, and I would say there's nothing there, but literally electric light just came in as you spoke about that. I kind of want to say thank you, Sarah, so I will. Thank you. To speak into that from my perspective, that London is so important to me, for a number of reasons. I wrote this play, because as a healer I learned I was killed as a witch, so I wanted to know the answer. But that wasn't the only reason. I wrote this play because I'd seen the spirit of my nan come back to me, crystal clear. It was so beautiful and it was so stunning, and I wanted the world to know that was possible. And it changed me, and you'll see it in Sarah that speaks in the play about spirit and has that taken from her for being a witch. And I really feel that it's important to speak into the fact that there was, whatever your belief system is, there was so many cunning folk who worked as magical practitioners and witches, and they never got their honouring. They did have, maybe they weren't always killed, they were, a lot, but they weren't always killed. It was often accusations, but they had their businesses stolen from them. They weren't allowed to practice because to be deemed a witch got you into trouble. So they got silenced and their spirits got squashed. And that, to the healing community, the laws that changed into the Fraudulent Medium Acts when it wasn't the Witchcraft Act are still as damaging, as I know from my great grandfather who suffered at the Fraudulent Medium Act, who was an astonishing medium. And that ripple effect through us healers, myself being one of them, has been a huge part of our history. And I want to speak about that in London because of the cunning woman that I name. It's very important to me, Joan Peterson, who was practicing and was killed for witchcraft in East London. But also that my nan's ashes are buried, scattered in Hoxton Square where she grew up. And my family were Cockney, so I fell in love with the language of canting, and that's before it got to be a bigger play about other things. And I'm going to speak into that in a moment, that it was my love for my family, and that's my nan that came back to me. And so I know she's going to take me where the journey needs to go, because she would never call herself a witch, but I know you were, Nana, in her own little way. And then what happened with divine timing, and I think that's how Scotland stepped in, is there was suddenly this movement, which was so amazing, to go to Beacon Arts at that time with the Witches of Scotland, and other charities, and remembering the accused witches. All, I mean, they've been working a long time, but suddenly there felt like this movement, and it's certainly happening in Scotland. I think it's unfortunate it's not happening in the same way here, but maybe that's the part.
I think it's starting. So I have a feeling. I think it's starting. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that there's it wasn't ready, and something changed, and something was like, oh God, I need to be on Scottish lands, and these new witches' voices need to come in, and now it's bigger. And I for some reason Sarah Spindler spoke to me the most, and she died in Bury St Edmunds, and we haven't even got there yet in any way. So, and I know her story was the one that I had to tell, and I think there's an importance to her story. And somebody reached out from my community and said, I live in Bury St Edmunds, and this is really speaking to me. And she's a magical witch herself. And I think what's so important about the Bury St Edmunds part is it was a group of women, but beyond that, Matthew Hopkins did a lot of damage around that area and around Essex and around these counties, Bedfordshire included, which is where I'm from, that is not really highlighted enough. He went on that crusade, and I promise you, when we uncover the root of it, it will be that he took down quite a few powerful kind of women as well.
Well, this is the thing. I mean, having lived in Bury St Edmunds as well for most of, well, certainly half of my life, and but certainly it was something that you never learned at school. You never learned that actually, that Bury St Edmunds, your hometown, is the place where the most, where 18 women and men were executed, and that he went on to become Witchfinder General. But it's also the same in Scotland, which is that they don't learn the history. They don't learn the history, and yet it actually in Scotland it happened in almost every village and town. I mean, so it's about rewriting this, isn't it? It's about kind of rewriting the history and raising those voices.
There's so much in it. So to close up, the only thing that's left for me is a little bit of a celebration of 5D theatre, and what that's brought. And that 5D theatre, even though it's a company I just started through Awaken very recently, would not have been possible without the both of you, because somehow you were already working in this 5D way that I didn't even know existed. So I just want to speak into like the absolute gratitude I have for you both as creatives that I admire. I mean, I'd like to say that I've just recently saw Law's film, which is phenomenal piece of film, ridiculous. I mean, I was, yeah, on all levels, the performance, the writing, the subject matter, and also, you know, I mean, Ellie, you're just a phenomenal actress, but everything you turn your hand to, so it's ridiculous. And I got the luck to work with you both, even though you're busy, very busy women, and you know, with your own passions and projects still going along and always happening. So I don't know, without you both, there was no 5D theatre. It came from a space of a hub of between us owls.
Absolutely. And I think, you know, this is the thing, because you can so easily, especially when you're going into production for anything, you know, the times that we spoke about, that it's so easy to move into kind of beta mode, to turn to that kind of the stress levels and go, oh, well, this is how it's meant to feel. So we do it like this. And it's like, luckily, we've all had a lot of experience, certainly of very kind of high stressed environments, to know actually that it can be done differently. And I think that was the beauty of the Actors Temple, which is within knowing the rules. You've got to know the rules, you've got to know the parameters of how things work, and then you can break them. Then you can look at other ways of doing things. But if you're not actually paying any attention to those at all, then there's no structure to kind of, you know, so I think that's why I think that 5D has such a bright future, because I think that just going forward with well-being of one another as human beings, just that thoughtfulness, that empathy, that ability to see what somebody else is feeling and going through, you know, is vital to create, but also to be kind to one another and to just live side by side, you know. So it's it's wonderful that you offer a meditation to go alongside Awaken, because it does deal with themes, and not even themes, but things that actually did happen, that humans are capable of doing to one another. And I think it's a lesson there that we can take, so that it doesn't keep being repeated and it never happens again, but it is still happening. So Awaken's job is not done. Yeah.
No,
I think that one thing that, just following on from that, this idea that in these certain situations we have to be stressed about things. And actually, I think one of the things that certainly I got to practice, and I think that we all got to practice, was being present, and that includes being mindful of what's happening in the space, what's happening in this individually, and having faith in each other, that actually allowing whatever is there needs to be there, and to trust that's okay, rather than this, you know, I know there are moments that my mind would go, oh my God, we've got to move on, we've got to, and it was like, you know, just come back to the heart, come back to your self-compassion and care for everyone, because this generosity of spirit is the thing that is alleviating the stress, but it's also allowing whatever is there to come in, and having faith that we'll be where we need to be, you know. And even if where we need to be is halfway in the middle of a film come Saturday, that's where we need to be. And actually it didn't happen that way. It went perfectly smoothly, and even if we had moments where we all fell apart, we were, yeah, that's okay, we're falling apart now, that's all that's happening, and in a minute it will change, or not.
Falling apart, but actually all going deeper, you know. And this is the thing, isn't it? It's kind of like, well, you know, sometimes it's like there's a what is it? There's a crack in everything. That's how the light gets in, you know. It's so yeah.
And I do remember those moments of being like, oh my God, and I'm going, it's going to be fine. And I thought, she knows it's not going that well, but she's being okay with it. And it's like I did have that moment of coming outside, and I did have a meltdown, which I was like, oh God, I shouldn't have, it was one of those moments where I was just like, oh. And I went outside, and I remember sitting on a bench, and you both were like, take a moment. And I put so much pressure on myself to get this film done, to show the world what this really means. And I just sat down and I was like, but what's it all for? Take it back to one thing. And I heard it's for Sarah. It was always for Sarah Spindler. Let's do it for Sarah then. Stop worrying about what else, just do it.
And it was also that wonderful point where I think you said, I feel so responsible. I feel responsible for this. And every single person in that room said, but let us take some of the responsibility. We're all in this. And it was beautiful, wasn't it? It was just that. It wasn't we're going to carry you, but it's like we're all here, and we're not just playing a role here. We have a role to play, and that is important to us. And one of those roles is to support one another through this, which is of course what what you'd want every ensemble to be like.
Exactly.
But sometimes it has to be said. Sometimes we need to be reminded that we don't personally have to carry everything on our shoulders, but we do that in whatever walk of life we,
especially when we've written a humongous, great thing.
So was that a moment of, I remember the cast saying, so why did you write this? And it's like, because I was killed in a witch in a past life. And I always try and do how do I say to people, honestly, what happened to me? And then my name is a spirit, and then this happened, and there's been moments that we haven't even touched on that have been a bit overwhelming and intense, as spirit has stepped in on this project time and time again, and I've gone, okay.
But we've also been like, oh, of course that would have happened, and of course this, because it's kind of like, so expect the unexpected. No drama without drama. No. All of these little things that I say each time. But it's
And naming it Awaken was the time it changed. It's like, it's about awaken. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So it was like a big.
Part of the moment where you wanted called Awake, we were like,
no.
Is that true?
Awake.
Or just awake.
Awake. Yeah,
that's right. No, I do remember that.
Yeah, not awake.
You have to try.
But
it could be called that. I mean, we've got so many different things. So it's exciting to get to this day, to celebrate this, and the fact that what could happen when it's fully breathed in, fully realized. The dream's always bigger than I expect, and the curve. But I am. I hear Joan Peterson. I am ready. Be ye ready. I am ready.
I am ready, and it's all happening now. It's that whole thing of the chasing your dreams thing. The kind of success is over there somewhere. It's when it gets to this stage, then it will be successful. When it gets to this stage, it will be successful. It's like we're sharing it. People are feeding back. People are getting something from it. It is. That success and us being together, celebrating, the process that we have, and the love of working with one another. It's all success. So whatever is next, I am ready.
Go on, Laura, try it out. Be you ready? I am ready.
Be you ready?
It's a good couple of lines, that. It's a few good lines.
Yeah. Just those, a couple of lines in it. They're all
right. And cue. Be you ready?
Amazing. Well, that's anything I forgot to say? Are you happy? We're in completion.
I think so. That feels
just what a fantastic job you and I and us have done. You know, congratulations. I mean, it's an epic piece, and it's not finished yet. You know, it is ever unfolding, and that is why it's so beautiful.
Yeah.
So thank you for letting us be a part of your journey.
Yes.
Yeah. It was chosen. It was always bigger, it was chosen. And that's why it's so delightful to come together on the summer solstice and it's beautiful
Yeah.
day and share space.
It is.
So thank you both so much.
Thank you.
Great pleasure.